Have you been thinking about making that switch to Linux, but you're not quite ready, and you don't want to make any changes to your Windows system until you know that you're going to stick with Linux? Well, today I've got a solution for you. Let's get into it. Future Ray here. I wanted to come back and clarify. The first part of this video is going to be how you can just try Linux without making any changes to your current Windows system. Kind of kick the tires. The last half of this video will be if you decide you're ready to make that leap. I'll show you how to set it up. Okay, back to Past Ray. There are many reasons why you may be thinking about making that leap over to Linux. Let's go over a few of those. How about cost? So there's no cost associated with Linux. There's no licensing to pay for, no subscription fees. How about security? Linux open source platform allows a large community of developers to constantly be checking it for vulnerabilities, decreasing the possibility for viruses and malware. You don't hear a whole lot of videos out there around antivirus for Linux, do you? Not that it can't happen, it's just way less likely than if using a Windows computer. How about the customization options? You have way greater control over your system's appearance and functionality. You can customize everything from the desktop environment to the software packages you install. How about stability? Linux is known for its stability and reliability. You'll experience a lot less restarts and system freezes when using Linux. Not to mention the performance. Linux is generally way more efficient in terms of resources used. You can actually operate Linux on a much older system and still get the performance that you would expect. They have a large variety of software. No, it's not as extensive as Windows, but generally I find, and I've made several videos attesting to that, that typically whatever I use on the Microsoft side, there is a comparable free and open source program for Linux. In addition to that, there are ways to run Windows programs on Linux. There are platforms out there like Docker that allows you to run applications in isolated containers. Containers package an application and its dependencies and allow you to run it consistently across different environments. We'll talk more about that in a later video. I want today's video to be for the absolute beginner that's on the fence about making that switch, and I want to show you how easy it is to at least get started. So the good thing about Linux, we can actually load it to a flash drive, run it in the Linux environment, and kind of kick the tires to see if this is something that we want to stick with. It's also very important to do that, and I'll tell you why. So you want to make sure that all of your current hardware is supported in Linux. You also want to make sure that the software that you are dependent on a daily basis has a compatible Linux version. And we can do all that just playing around with Linux right from a flash drive, not making any changes to your system that's currently running Windows. There are other ways to dual boot Linux and Windows. We'll do a video about that later. The issue with that, especially if you're trying to do it on the same hard drive, is typically whenever Windows releases a new update, it'll make a change to the boot record and cause a lot of problems. Linux comes in a variety of distributions, and among those distributions, a variety of flavors. The one that I chose for today's demonstration, I feel like, is a good choice for someone who's still on the fence making that switch from Windows to Linux. It has kind of that feel of a Windows 7 10 environment. So of course, we're talking about Linux Mint 22, aka Wilma. I get it. I'm not saying that that is the best Linux distribution. I'm simply saying that in my opinion, it is a good one for someone who's just dipping their toes in the water and wanting to get started on that Linux journey. Of course, there are more popular distributions like Ubuntu, and I'm sure we will do a future video on those additional distributions. But for today, I want this to be beginner friendly. So we're going to load Linux Mint 22 onto a flash drive, boot into it, look around at all of the features, make sure that our hardware is compatible, make sure that we understand where to get the software we need, and that'll be the first half of the video. And if that's all you wanted to do, then you're done. If you've made the decision to go ahead and move to Linux, the second half of the video, I will install Linux and set it up. All right, so let's make sure that you have a flash drive with at least 8 gigabytes of free space. I would recommend using USB 3.0 or better. You can use a USB 2.0 flash drive, but it will likely be much slower. I'll put a link down in the description on some flash drives that I like from Amazon if you need one. So the first thing that we need to do is go to the Linux Mint website. We'll download the ISO, then we'll head over to Rufus. Rufus is the tool that we're going to use to put Linux onto this flash drive. Once we've completed those two tasks, we'll boot into the flash drive and we'll play around with Linux. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to hop over here to Google and we're going to type in Linux Mint. Then we're going to come over here to the Linux Mint homepage. Let's take a look at the frequently asked questions so we can look at the system requirements. So you need a minimum requirement of 2 gigabytes of RAM, 4 gigabytes recommended, 20 gigabytes of disk space, 100 gigabytes recommended, and a resolution of 1024 by 760. So we'll come back over here to downloads. So let's come over here to download. I'm going to go with Cinnamon Edition. Download. Then you're going to come down here and pick a download mirror. I'm just going to click on the first one. Then as you can see up here in the top right hand corner, that is downloading. I'm going to skip forward to my downloads folder. And as you can see, I already have Linux Mint right here in my downloads folder. We're going to leave that there for now. And we're going to go back to Google. We're going to type in Rufus, R-U-F-U-S. Now instead of going right here to the Rufus main site, I like to get it from GitHub, but you can get it from either place. From GitHub, I'm going to go click down here on the latest release, which is Rufus 4.6. Then right here under the assets, I'm going to go to the third one down, which is the portable version. You can use whichever one you like. I just like the portable version, so I'm going to click on that. You'll see that it's downloading up here. This errors here is just because I canceled that previous download of Linux because I already had it in my downloads folder, so ignore that. Rufus is downloaded here. So if I jump back over to my downloads folder, we'll see Rufus is here. So now you have the Cinnamon ISO and the Rufus download. So this is the point that you want to take that flash drive and plug it into your computer. Okay, so once you have your flash drive plugged in, you want to come over here and double click on Rufus. You're going to get the user account control screen. Just click yes. It's going to ask you if you want to allow Rufus to check for application updates online, and I'm going to tell it yes. Okay, so you want to make sure that this top box here has your flash drive that you just plugged in. Okay, then we're going to come over here and select. We're going to go to our downloads folder. And we're going to select that Cinnamon ISO that we downloaded. You shouldn't have to change any settings in here. After you've selected the ISO, just come down here and click Start. You're going to get this message here. I just leave it here on the recommended write in ISO image mode, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Yes. This is the warning that all of my data is going to be erased from this drive. I'm going to click OK. Now this is going to take a few minutes here, so I will pause and skip ahead. Okay, once it says ready, you can go ahead and close this out. Okay, so now we're ready to reboot to that flash drive that we just created. Every system's a little different, but you should have a single key that you could tap once you reboot your system. I will put a list up here of the common ones. It could be F11, F12. If you actually have to enter the BIOS and change the boot order, there would be a different key for that. It could be escape, F1, F2. I'll put a list up here of the common ones. If you don't see your computer on this list, just Google Dell boot menu key or whatever your brand is. I'll show you on mine. I'm actually going to use this test computer, which happens to be a gateway. Okay, let's reboot into Linux. Real quick, before we reboot into Linux, if you are logged into Windows with a Microsoft account and you have BitLocker enabled, I would disable BitLocker before moving forward. If Windows detects any kind of change in the boot order, it may go into BitLocker recovery once you reboot. Not always, but it's a possibility. One of the reasons I can't stand Microsoft accounts and BitLocker. All you have to do is go into Windows and turn off BitLocker before rebooting into Linux, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, from Windows, you just want to come down here, right click on your start, go to settings. If you're in Windows 10, same thing, just go to settings. Under system, we're going to come down here to storage, advanced storage settings, disks and volumes. This is a list of all of the disks on your computer. You want to find your main drive that Windows is loaded on. Usually this will be drive C right here. Go to properties and then just scroll down here and look at BitLocker. Mine is not on, so that's why it says turn on BitLocker. But if BitLocker is on, just turn that off. If you happen to get caught in a BitLocker recovery, you just have to go to the Microsoft page, go to devices, get your BitLocker key, enter the key in to remove it. It's a pain, so just turn it off. All right, so we're gonna reboot into that flash drive. So I'm just gonna go down here and restart. I'm gonna tap escape on this gateway. Okay, so I've tapped escape to enter my BIOS. I'm gonna go over here to the boot menu. So this UEFI General Partition 1 looks like it's gonna be my flash drive. So I'm gonna move this to the first position here in the boot priority by using the plus/minus key. Okay, now that I've changed that to my first boot order, I'm going to go ahead and save and exit, and it should boot into that flash drive. Now, yours will likely say something different here, so you'll need to identify which one is your flash drive. Alternatively, you don't actually have to enter the BIOS. You could have just a single boot menu key, like F10, F11, F12, that just brings you to the boot menu instead of all the way into the BIOS. So I'm going to save and exit. And this should boot me into the flash drive. And it did. Okay, so once you get into the flash drive, you're going to have this menu here. Let's go ahead and use this first selection that says Start Linux Mint 22 Cinnamon 64-bit. Now remember, we are not making any changes to your current installation. We're not removing any files. We're not changing anything. We're just booting directly from this flash drive. It may take a minute to load into Linux here. This test computer I'm using is rather slow, so it's actually a good candidate for Linux. Here we go. Now, this is actually loaded into the desktop, but because of the resolution, you can't actually see my start menu or anything. So I'm gonna right click here and I'm gonna go ahead and change these settings. So I have an external monitor here, which is why I can't see anything. So I'm gonna make sure that I change to my primary monitor. Then I'm gonna click apply. Okay, there we go. Now we can see. I'm gonna keep this new configuration. I'm gonna close this out, and we are in Linux Mint 22, aka Wilma. Okay, so let's just start from the left and we'll go right and just review. So down here, of course, you got the clock, very similar to Windows. I have a calendar here, but no events. Directly to the left of that, we have some other settings that we can change. Power settings, brightness, battery, meter, normal stuff that you would also expect to see in Windows. Next we have sound volume, sound settings. Then we've got Wi-Fi. This is an important one because you want to make sure that your Wi-Fi adapter is recognized, and in my case it definitely is. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to my Wi-Fi here. So this is one of the reasons why we want to test this before actually installing it. Now I will blur out these other Wi-Fi connections in order to respect the privacy of my neighbors. And I'm going to authenticate here. I'm going to connect. And I am connected. So to the next we have notifications. Much like you would expect in Windows. Got notification settings. This is the only notification I have right now for my Wi-Fi. If we click on this, we can turn on and off notifications. Select the monitor used for notifications. Blah, 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 blah. I'm gonna close this out. Okay. Now next, this is an important one too. So it has recognized my Bluetooth adapter, which you want to make sure that it recognizes yours. I have been in a situation, it's been a while ago, but I had a desktop computer that I installed Linux on, and it had a Bluetooth adapter, but it was very old, and I had a fun time trying to find a driver for it, but I eventually did. So just check to make sure that your Bluetooth driver is recognized. Okay, well, let's start over here. So down here we've got a terminal. We're not going to go into the terminal today, but this is a terminal where you would enter command lines and such. We'll do another video on that, but you will use a lot of that in Linux. And of course we have pinned down here our Firefox web browser, standard operating equipment with Linux Mint. And we'll set up our web browser. So let's just skip for this for now. Let's skip for now. Let's skip for now. Let's start browsing. Search the web. We have some pinned shortcuts down here. YouTube, Facebook, all that fun stuff. Gonna close out our web browser. We have our folder icon here for files, to which I don't have any right now. You can kind of see the theme here. All of this is very similar to Windows. Okay, now let's get to the fun stuff. So down here, if we click our, let's call it a start menu, we have our power down here. We can log out, we can lock our system. We have that file menu. We have the terminal. We have the system settings. Let's click on that. Okay, I'm not going to go through all these. They are pretty self-explanatory. You have your backgrounds, effects, themes. Let's select a different background. Let's do that. I'm going to go over here to Wilma specific backgrounds. Let's go with a nice sunset. How about that? Okay, so we've changed our background. Now let's change the theme because I like a dark theme. Okay, I'm gonna go to dark theme because that's what I like. And I'm gonna leave that there. All right, let's go back over here. Again, you have all the stuff that you would expect to see in a system setting. Menu, date, time, account details, accessibility, screensaver, Windows, but not of the Microsoft variety. Privacy, all of that fun stuff. Let's close that out. Let's go back over here, see what else we have. So here we have Software Manager. This is going to be an important one, but I'm going to come back to this. Let's go over here first just to see what's already installed on the computer. So we've got all applications here. You've got accessories. You've got some graphics stuff here. You've got internet, of course, our Firefox web browser. We have LibreOffice, which is pre-installed, and if you've watched other videos on my channel, you know I'm a big fan of LibreOffice. I have a full video of it, so make sure you check that out. And administration, disk tools, preferences, and if any of the programs here you want on your desktop, just very similar to Windows, you can right click here and go to add to desktop. All right, let's go over here to the software manager. This is where you are going to find software to download to your Linux installation. If things seem a bit slow in here, just remember we are running this from a flash drive, not an actual hard drive. And also, in particular, I'm using a little cheap Gateway netbook. Once you install this on your system, it will be much, much faster. Okay, and now you have some of the featured software up here. We've got some Bitwarden password manager. You got your FileZilla for transferring files securely. Got some Google Earth. You got categories here. You got top rated apps. Scroll through some of these. And then of course, you can use your search box up here, like if you need some imaging software. Let's just type in GIMP and we can download a GIMP right here. Let's say we needed OBS Studio. We can grab that right here. So pretty much if there's a program you need, type it up here in your search box. Also remember, anything that's web-based you can run directly from your internet browser, just like you do on Windows. What my advice would be is to take some time, come through here, and just play around with Linux. I did forget one thing. Let me backtrack a little bit. One thing you definitely want to do is come over here to Administration and go to Driver Manager. What this is going to do is scan your system and see if there are any drivers that you need. And as you can see for me, there are no drivers needed, so I'm good with my hardware. Okay, that's Linux Mint. If you just wanted to test drive it without making any changes to your system, you are good to go. Okay, if you were just here to kick the tires and you're not ready to make any changes to your Windows system, then you are good to go. If you're ready to make that leap to Linux, stick around for the rest of the video. We'll run through and do an install real quick. If you found value in this video, do me a favor, please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing to the channel doesn't cost you a thing, but what it does is help with that YouTube algorithm, and it helps me grow the channel so I can continue to bring you content just like this. If you're sticking around for the rest of the video, let's jump back over to the computer and we'll do an install real quick. Okay, now we're back into the computer and we're still at this point running from the flash drive. So we're going to go right here to install Linux Mint. I'm going to select my English language here and then click continue. I'm going to choose my default keyboard, which is English US. Okay, then it's going to ask us to install multimedia codecs. Those are required to play some types of video formats and to properly render some websites. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and then continue. If you saw that there where it says loading Ubuntu drivers, that's because Mint is actually built off of Ubuntu. Okay, now we have some questions here. The first one is, do we want to install Linux Mint alongside the Windows Boot Manager? I do not want to do this. You'll be dual booting on the same hard drive, and that could potentially cause problems. Windows will cause problems. So I would definitely recommend having separate partitions, or even better, separate hard drives to dual boot from. So for today, I'm just going to erase the disk and install Linux Mint. You can check out the advanced features here if you want to. I'm just going to keep with none, and I'm going to go install now. So this is just warning us that it's going to destroy all of the data on our hard drive. If you are doing this to get rid of the old Windows and start fresh anew with Linux, then go ahead and click continue. Alright, so for this, it's going to ask me where I'm at. This is just for time zone purposes. So although I'm not actually in Chicago, I am on Chicago time. So I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to click continue. Okay, so up here, it wants our name. And I'm just going to put test PC because that's my name. You can adjust the computer name here if you would like. And again, I'm going to put test PC and pick a username. Test is fine. You should absolutely put in a password. Unlike Microsoft, this is just a local account on this computer. Once you've got your password entered, you can decide whether you want to log in automatically or whether you want to require a password for login, or whether you want to encrypt your home folder. I'm just going to leave this here at login automatically for now and click continue. And now we are copying files. Okay, after it's downloaded files, then it'll start installing the system. Okay, once the installation is complete, you can stay here and continue testing, or you can restart now and go into your fully installed version. Once we click restart now, it will likely tell you to remove that flash drive that we inserted. It's telling us to remove that installation media, then press enter, so I have done that. Okay, now for me, same thing here. I have to change my display settings because it is set for my laptop screen. So I'm just going to update these settings, keep my new configuration. Okay, welcome to Linux Mint. Now you can take the tutorial here, just kind of run through, and it may be a good idea to at least start here with the driver manager, then go to the update manager to do any updates. Go through your system settings, go down here to the software manager and grab any software you may need. Make sure that your firewall is set, and then have fun and enjoy the freedom of not being bound to Microsoft. And there you have it. Whether you just wanted to kick the tires or you decided to make that leap into Linux, if you found value in this video, please do me a favor, like and share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing to the channel doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps me tremendously with that YouTube algorithm. It helps me grow the channel and allows me to continue to bring you content just like this. Check out some of these other video suggestions. Thank you for watching, and until next time.